ANC leader Cyril Ramaphosa has called on the Democratic Alliance to disclose its own cadre deployment policy. That's after the ANC was ordered by the courts to hand over minutes and documents to the DA. Several former DA members have also made claims that the opposition has also itself made politically motivated appointments within its ranks. So we take a look now at what we need to understand about the supposed cadre deployment policy and what impact it has on governance. Political analyst Professor Duvenhage is standing by to give us some perspective. Prof, thank you very much for your time. So the DA also sought to declare, or for the courts to declare, the ANC's cadre deployment policy unconstitutional. And this week, in a judgment delivered by the Gauteng High Court Deputy Judge President Obriphago Ledwaba, he said, and I read, the judgment says, like any other political party, the ANC is entitled to influence government decisions, including the appointment of senior staff to public administration, as long as the bright line between state and party is observed. Has the bright line between state and party not been observed?
Well, Dudu and listeners, I think we must go back at the core principle that is applicable here. And when we look at a democracy, one of the first core characteristics of a democracy is a clear differentiation between state and the non-state environment. And secondly, there's a differentiation between party government and party government regime. And if you look at the ANC's policy is basically centralist. It's very strong socialist in orientation, and it tried to take control not only of the regime alone, but also of civil society and institutions within the context of civil society. The ideological position of the Democratic Alliance is quite different. The Democratic Alliance is recognizing the different sectors of society, working together. In fact, in terms of their official manifesto, they are working towards the point where they ask civil society to become involved in politics. They do not want to control. So there's a big ideological difference. Secondly, if we look at the policies, as far as I know, the DA has no formal cadre policy. But when it comes to the ANC, there's a formal policy, there's a strategy, and there's institutions that are controlling these processes from the Tuli House. And it is run by the deputy president. So it was Mr. Ramaphosa, in many cases, who was responsible for these meetings. And it's interesting that the minutes over that period is gone. So I think there's a huge difference between the two parties. And then the third big thing is we must take into consideration the DA is in control of a province, in many ways subjected to national government. And maybe in a certain way on local government, they have autonomy. Now, the practice in democracy is that the government can influence these decisions, normally at a high level, but you cannot make direct appointments. So I think it is two different kettle of fish that we have here. And it's interesting for the comparison. I think there's not going to come a lot from this, but maybe in individual cases here and there, it may be possible that you can connect the influence, but there's no formal decision-making from the side of the DA as far as I could pick up. So it's a difference between democratic practices on one side and socialist, centralist practices on the other side.
Prof, it could very well be argued that the ruling ANC has actually given civil society, to a fault, much space to operate in the country equally so. But when we speak of cadre deployment, what is your understanding of that, right? So maybe not even cadre, but deployment. What is your understanding of that? When a party comes into rule and they want to deploy people they think can carry the job, whether they're able to or not, we'll discuss that in a few moments, but what is the understanding of this concept of deployment?
Okay, if I can answer that straightforward, cadre deployment means that the political party is using governance and state structures to make appointments within the bigger regime or political system that is loyal to the party and that is sanctioned by the party structures, in this case, Letoile House. So that is what we talk about cadre deployments. So there's a direct involvement from the party towards government, towards the bigger political system, and it's also involving systems outside that of formal government. We think about Eskom, we think about Transnet, and we think about a number of these institutions. When it comes to the normal democratic practice, they will take over a government and they may appoint a number of senior people in senior positions. That is the normal practice. But the practice is not to try and take control of a whole system, of a whole regime on all levels, subjected to the support of government and party structures in this case.
Prof, when you speak of loyalty to the party, so for instance, the ANC launched its manifesto yesterday. For it to be able to achieve its objectives of job creation, there's a point where they speak about improving things at local government level, for instance. And so what is it that the ANC is doing that any other political party would not do, more so when you speak of loyalty to the party, to be able to execute that which they are promising the electorate? Again, we'll get into whether that is working or not in a few moments, but what is it that they are doing that any other political party would not do to ensure loyalty so that it's able to achieve its objectives in an ideal world?
I think when it comes to the bigger political system, a party cannot always expect loyalty on all levels. It's not about loyalty here. It's about merit. It's about people that are in a position to do their jobs. And it's clear to me when I look at the Western Cape and I look at some other municipalities under the DA control, it seems as if there's merit appointment. And we can see that in terms of the performance of the Western Cape in comparison to, for example, the Northwest Province, my own province, the Free State, the Eastern Cape, Limpopo, and so on. So it's all about the process of appointing people. That should be independent. It should be driven by merit. And that is what capacity building is all about. It is to create, to generate, and develop your capacity without the necessary loyalty towards a certain political party and a certain ideology. Mm-hmm. When this is coming into play, to me, that is fundamentally undemocratic in terms of the core principles of democracy. And that is my concern, and I think that is the problem with the ANC. They are working with loyalty rather than merit. And we have seen the results. And then there's a second problem, and that is a problem with ethics, values, and norms. And we have seen that many of these cadres are promoting corruption in terms of networks, sometimes tending to become criminal networks. If we look at Eskom, and if you look at what the writer said about Eskom, and that is a huge concern to me. You should create independence.
Sure. I think the jury is still out on Andre the Rater's report, Prof. But if we take a look at cadre deployment in and of itself, perhaps what I'm hearing from you is that there is nothing wrong with the concept. There is everything wrong if the wrong people are put in there that are unable, rather, to service you and I. And so this concept can work if it puts the needs of the electorate first before the needs of the party, only using the party to be a vehicle to execute that which you and I need. Is that a correct assessment of what we've been hearing?
That is a correct assessment within certain limitations. It is not about the total control of a system. It is about getting the right people in the position in order for a party to become government and to be in a position to execute their policies and to attain their goals. Okay. That is what it is all about.
Sure.
And at the moment, what we are looking at is to a large extent the opposite.
Okay. Prof, when it comes to the ANC asking the DA to release its own records, if they have nothing to hide, they should be able to do so, no?
Well, my take on it is they don't have any records because they don't have a policy with regard to cadre deployment. And what they will probably say is, we have proper processes and protocols for appointing people. And they can probably identify the records of appointing these people. But they do not have a formal policy and they do not have party control over these appointments. So I don't think there is formal records, as is the case with the ANC in terms of decisions, minutes, etc.
That would be curious, no? You go to a simple meeting, there's an agenda, there's a recording of minutes, more so a party like the Democratic Alliance, where from the outside in looks such like a well-run machine. So maybe the computers won't crash there, and if needs be, they'll be able to produce those records. Prof, thank you so much for your contribution this morning.